Aloha and welcome to Vice Cubes. I'm your host, Raven Aiko. Thank you for joining me today. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Mixcloud, Castbox, and YouTube. Come follow me on Facebook at Vice Cubes Podcast and Instagram at Vice Cubes, where I often share pics that correlate with each episode. And come visit my website at vicecubespodcast.com. You can also send me an email at vicecubes@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this podcast, please do so at patreon.com/vicecubespodcast. So tonight's case is a super interesting one. It's got a love triangle, betrayal, murder, not one, but two fires. It's got everything. And by the end, you're going to hate this guy so much. So if you were to research the reasons why people kill, there are three main motives, and most other reasons fall under one of these motives. They are 1, financial greed, 2, sexual or relational, and 3, power. The case we are examining this week falls under motive number 2. It's all about jealousy, and I'm sure you've heard the phrase, it's always the spouse. Whenever, a woman is killed, it's always the husband. Whenever a guy is killed, it's always the wife that poisoned him. Someone must have been cheating. Well, it isn't always, but in this case, it's true. This is the story of Orlando Ganal Sr. and his jealous rampage that left 5 people dead and 3 injured. The resources for this case are Wikipedia, Murderpedia, AP News, Hawaii News Now, Honolulu Star Advertiser, and the book Honolulu Homicide, Murder and Mayhem in Paradise by Gary Diaz, a retired major from the Hawaii Police Department. As a side note, sadly, Gary Diaz passed away from natural causes last month on July 17th, 2020. All right, so let's get into this case. On the morning of August 26, 1991, Orlando Ganal Sr. claimed to have woken up in his truck, sweating profusely at a beach in Makaha. He stripped down to his underwear and removed his watch and went into the ocean to rinse off. While in the water, according to Ganal, he spotted someone stealing his clothes. He attempted to chase them, but cut his foot on something sharp in the water, and they got away with his clothes, so he jumped into his truck wearing only his underwear and drove home to his house in Waipahu. That was his story. While driving home, his truck was spotted by 2 officers from the Hawaii Police Department. They checked and confirmed that the license plate was the one that they were looking for and followed him. Once arriving home, Ganal started exiting his vehicle, and the officers began shouting at him to put his hands up. The officers approached him with guns drawn and instructed him to lay face down on the ground. He did not comply. The officers moved in closer, grabbed his left hand, swept his feet out from under him as he resisted by yelling, kicking, and swinging his arms. The officers placed him in handcuffs once they got him on the ground and informed him that he was under arrest for murder. So let's go back to the night before. On the evening of August 25th, 1991, at approximately 7 p.m., Mabel Ganal told her son, then 14-year-old Orlando Ganal Jr., or Jun, as they called him, to call his dad to pick him up so he could go spend time with him. Mabel and Ganal had recently split up, and Mabel and Jun had moved in with Mabel's parents at their home in Waipahu. When Jun called his dad, they got into an argument on the phone. Mabel called Ganal after Jun got off the phone to apologize to him, but he began swearing at her and accusing her of turning their son against him. So after this, Mabel and her son sat down for dinner at Mabel's parents' house with her parents, Aradina and Santiago de la Cruz, who were both 59 years old. After dinner, they all watched some TV and then went off to bed. Mabel was asleep on the couch when she woke to the sound of the front door being forced open. She looked up and was face to face with a silver gun. She was shot alongside her head. She crawled to her brother's room and then to her dad's room, but both doors were locked. The entire time she was crawling around, the intruder was kicking and punching her. She couldn't see who it was too dark. At this time, hearing the commotion, her father, Santiago de la Cruz, came out of his room and saw this intruder attacking his daughter. He tried to help her, but the intruder pointed the gun at Santiago and pulled the trigger. He was able to stumble backward into his room and call 911. Junjun, who was asleep in the living room in front of the TV, then woke up hearing his mother screaming his name. He opened his eyes and saw his father in the light from the balcony. Ganal then shot his own son in the mouth. Junjun managed to escape and ran downstairs to a neighbor's house for help. Mabel was able to run out of the house and hid in a neighbor's yard several houses away. Mabel's brother, Diego de la Cruz, who also lived in the home with his family, testified that he was asleep in his room when he was awakened by the sound of gunshots. He feared for the safety of his family, so he knocked out one of the windows and helped his wife and child climb outside. As they crouched outside, Diego heard the sound of someone pounding on his bedroom door, and then the sound of his father moaning in the hallway. When he climbed back inside, Diego saw his mother, Aradina, bent over a sofa, dead, and his father sliding down the stairway covered in blood and moaning. Aradina de la Cruz had died as a result of 7 gunshot wounds, and Santiago died as a result of 3 gunshot wounds. A neighbor of the de la Cruzes testified that around 11 p.m. that night, she heard a loud noise like a pipe hitting cement, and then she heard 6 gunshots. She saw a man in dark clothes who appeared to be reloading a gun, and another neighbor also heard the noises and shots, and saw a man running toward a dark-colored Chevy truck and drive away. A police reconstruction of the events showed that when Ganal left the de la Cruz residence, he then drove to Kailua, where he stopped at a gas station and filled 5 gallons of gasoline in a 5-gallon container. Anyway, so now we go to Kailua, to the home of Michael and Wendy Touche. That's around 24 miles away from Waipahu, I believe. A neighbor of the Touches testified at trial that she heard the sound of glass breaking, followed by an explosion. She looked outside and saw a Filipino or local man wearing a dark jacket and jeans, carrying an object and walking rapidly toward a dark gray or blue truck. The man put the object in the bed of the truck and got in and drove away quickly. She then saw a fire in the Touche's house. 2 other neighbors also corroborated this testimony. Wendy Touche testified that on that night, she, her husband, and their 2 children, 10-month-old Joshua and 2.5-year-old Kayla, were getting ready for bed. The phone rang and her husband Michael answered, and she could hear him saying, "Hello? Hello?" several times, and then hanging up, saying no one responded on the other end. They all went to bed in the master bedroom. Wendy was awoken by the sound of Michael screaming. When she looked over, she saw that he was on fire. Just then, Wendy also caught on fire, and still groggy from sleep, she got out of bed and tried to get to the bathroom for some water. She couldn't get to the bathroom. The fire was too hot. Michael and Wendy struggled to get out of the house. The front door apparently was somehow locked from the outside. Wendy made it to the kitchen door, where upon opening it, she was pulled outside by someone. She immediately started screaming that her babies were still inside. One neighbor tried to enter the house to get the children, but was unable to. Both of the Touche children died of thermal burns and smoke inhalation at the scene. Michael Touche survived the night, but died a month later on September 23, 1991, as a result of complications related to severe burns over 80% of his body. Wendy survived, but suffered severe burns over 40% of her body and suffered scarring over much of her face. Fire investigator Glenn Solom testified that the fire was intentionally started with a liquid accelerant, and that based on the burn patterns, it appeared that 2 fires had been started separately, one in the living room and one in the bedroom. So now, from the Touche house, we move to the premises of Young Laundry and Dry Cleaning. So this was where Orlando Ganal had worked. The night watchman at Young's Laundry testified that he was on his patrol at around midnight when he discovered a fire burning on the 2nd floor of the building. Young's Laundry is a plant that operates 24 hours a day with employees working at all hours. The sprinkler system of the building had extinguished the fire. No one was injured, but the damage was estimated at $150,000. Fire investigator Warner Puccini testified that the fire was intentionally set with a combustible liquid. A gas can was found toward the back exit of the building. Mabel, Junjun, and Ganal's tenant testified that the gas can was similar to the one that Ganal kept in his tool shed at his house. After Ganal's arrest, a search of the home, garage, and tool shed turned up no gas can. I'm not sure what the motive was for the fire being set here. Perhaps he was angry about not being able to secure his workers' compensation. Okay, now let's go back to the arrest. Detective Vernon Santos arrived at the scene at about 6:40 a.m. Ganal was read his Miranda rights, and Santos asked Ganal for consent to search his truck. He signed the form after looking it over for a while and gave his consent to search. The search of the truck turned up one spent shell casing, which subsequently was determined to match shells recovered at the Dela Cruz and Touche houses. Ganal testified that at the time of his arrest, he complied with the officer's instructions, but that after he was cuffed behind his back, the officers kicked him in the ribs, thighs, elbows, and arms. He also claimed that one officer had pounded his head into the ground. It should be noted here that Ganal did suffer bruises on his face, arms, and rib area, as well as a broken nose. But according to the officers, this was due to his resisting arrest. They denied hitting him or seeing anyone else hitting him. On August 30th, 1991, a 12-year-old boy was snorkeling in Mokuleia when he saw and retrieved a gun and a sledgehammer lying on the bottom of the ocean in about 3 to 5 feet of water. He turned these things over to police, who then proceeded to search the shrubs in the surrounding areas. They found a pair of white Reebok shoes, gray socks, a black vinyl jacket with an empty bottle in the pocket, a pair of jeans, a maroon belt, and another empty brown bottle. In the pocket of the jeans, police found a BMW keyring, some loose change, and a letter from the Hawaii State Department of Education addressed to the parents of Orlando Ganal Jr. And written on the back of the letter was the address of Junjun's girlfriend, who testified that she had given him her address over the phone just the night before, on August 24th, the day before the rampage. I'm wondering here if Junjun's girlfriend understood the implications of this, that she may have literally dodged a bullet. So remember in the beginning, I said that Ganal told a story about someone stealing all of his clothes as an explanation why he showed up at his house wearing only his undies. Well, apparently they have been found. Mabel identified the BMW keyring as being hers and the shoes and belt as belonging to Ganal. Junjun identified the black jacket as belonging to his dad. The gun found in the ocean, a .357 Magnum revolver, matched 4 empty shell casings and a bullet recovered from the Dela Cruz house. An empty shell casing recovered from the road in the front of the Touche house, and an empty shell casing found in Ganal's truck. The sledgehammer was consistent with marks that were found on the outside of the door of the Dela Cruz house. So I bet at this point you're all wondering what the connection is between Ganal and the Touche family, right? Okay. Well, in February of 1991, let me just give you guys a little bit of backstory. So in February of that same year, Ganal had hurt his back at work. So he was having trouble obtaining workers' compensation. For anyone that has tried to obtain workers' comp benefits, you know that it's a lengthy process and it's just a pain in the butt. So during this time, Ganal became despondent. At around the same time, Mabel Ganal, his wife, started having an affair with a coworker from her part-time job. And this man's name was David Touche. When confronted with his suspicions that his wife was having an affair, Mabel told Ganal that it was true and she